We're going to move on to our last topic, and this is the longest onside kick that I think that we have had in some time. It's a 4-topicer. We went for a while on Dak and Tony. We went for a while on the Rams. I think the Lions were our shortest topic thus far, but the thing that we're going to look at now, we had to throw it in there, a 2017 NFL draft topic for you guys. Before we get into it, I have to announce that by this time, if you're listening on YouTube, it's already up. Go check it out. But if you're on Blog Talk Radio, on Thursday, I will be dropping my first mock draft of the year. So I wanted to say that. I didn't know that. Forgot to say it at the beginning of the podcast. News. So I'm saying for you guys, if you have not already and you're listening on YouTube right now, it's down below in the description.
Inside scoop, how many quarterbacks?
Right now I'm thinking 2. I'm not done with it as we're recording this podcast. I only have 2 picks solidified, which are the top 2. But the one we're talking about today, he is solidified. Apparently the Cleveland Browns have an astronomical grade for Myles Garrett. Is this the right pick if they make Myles Garrett?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. The only guy I would also consider is either Reed or Foster out of Alabama. But with this, you don't go quarterback. There is not a quarterback.
You got Robert Griffin.
There is not a quarterback in my mind that should be a first-round draft pick. And I think this is going to be very comparable to the 2013.
You think there should be no quarterbacks in the first round?
No quarterback. There will be. I'm not saying there won't be.
No, but I'm saying
there's not a quarterback with a first-round grade. There is not a quarterback with a first-round grade in my mind. I think Mitch Trubisky is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I'm high on Kaiser just because I love Notre Dame. But actually looking at Kaiser, he has very questionable decision-making and really – I just, when you look at him, he should be better. And I just feel like he's going to need a lot of help. And then with Deshaun Watson, he shouldn't have regressed like he did, but he regressed. And looking at it, the way he played, it seemed like there was just kind of a lack of confidence. And then when I feel like this draft class is going to be very similar to kind of the 2013 draft class where you have quarterbacks like E.J. Manuel go in the first round. You have Geno Smith go in the second round. There is not a Pro Bowler or a current starter except for Matt Barkley in this draft class. And Matt Barkley is not a starting quarterback, a future starting quarterback in the NFL. So I think that it's going to be very similar to the 2013, the 2010 draft class. I mean, outside of Sam Bradford, who's currently a starter, but Sam Bradford isn't a great quarterback. Sorry, Ricky. I think it's going to be similar to that draft class or the 2017 with Jamarcus Russell being a bust. I just think that there shouldn't be a quarterback going in the first round. And then when you have a guy like Myles Garrett, who is very similar to Von Miller, even has better grades than Von Miller, and a guy who is very similar grade-wise to Khalil Mack. Mack had a better durability grade, but Garrett had a better intangible grade. I mean, it is so hard to pass up a guy like that because you look at Oakland right now, that defense isn't fantastic, but you have a guy like Khalil Mack that's getting over 10 sacks this season just because he is that dynamic of a guy. He can keep you in games. And Von Miller pretty much won the Broncos the Super Bowl the way he played in it.
And here's what I'm going to say is I'm glad you brought up the Raiders because they are a perfect they're a perfect situation for what the Browns could do this year. As of right now, if the season ended today after week 14, the Browns would have the first overall pick, but also the 9th overall pick, because that's where the Eagles sit.
And the Eagles could fall because the Eagles have not been playing.
And the Eagles could fall, so that could be that could fall to a top 7, top 6, top 8 pick. And
I believe they're also playing the Giants and the Cowboys again, so it can definitely fall.
Well, divisional games. I think they've got divisional all
They
the
just played the Redskins
They played the
twice.
Redskins, so they've got divisional and then one non-division. The Ravens.
Which is a tough team, so they can easily go 0-3.
This is a team that if they wanted to, and this is all if they want to, could do the same thing that the Raiders did when they drafted Khalil Mack and Derek Carr. They can go ahead, get their defensive guy number 1, and then, or in the first round, and then go ahead.
He was 5th overall.
Yeah, that's what I said in the first round because he wasn't number 1.
I was adding that.
And then go ahead and get your quarterback. I mean, Derek Carr wasn't a first-round quarterback. I mean, you get the 9th pick to where you could say you can go, like, let's say
he was 33 or 34.
Because right now they're doing their due diligence on the quarterback situation. Like, the quarterbacks out there. They like a Deshaun Kaiser. They like a Deshaun Watson. They like a Mitch Trubisky, and he's still there at 9. They could easily go Garrett at 1 and then their quarterback at 9. Or they can say, hey, we're going to have a high second-round pick or a high this pick. Yeah.
They have Titans.
Let's go here in the first round, and then take a quarterback in the second round.
I agree with you. The first pick should be Myles Garrett, without a doubt. Unless something crazy happens.
If it's not Myles Garrett, then Jonathan Allen out of Alabama. Either way, defensive end.
I think that as long as nothing crazy happens leading up to the combine, leading up to the draft with Myles Garrett, and I'm not saying anything will, but just in case, if something happens, I think that there's no reason why Myles Garrett shouldn't be the number one overall pick, unless the Jalen Smith type thing happens where he gets injured in the bowl game. There's no reason he should not be the number one pick. Looking at him, he is deadly. And then you pair him with the linebackers you already have. You need to re-sign Jamie Collins, but Jamie Collins as an outside linebacker in coverage. Watching him on the Patriots, he's an athletic freak, and having him being able to drop back, and he's a good run stopper. He can rush the passer if you need to, but with the way Myles Garrett plays, he's not going to drop back in coverage that much. You really shouldn't. And then you also have Christian Kirksey, who's a good inside linebacker. You also have Demario Davis, who's a good inside linebacker. You have pieces there in the linebacking core that I really like, and then you just need to go out and find cornerback help because Joe Hayden isn't getting any younger and he's not that good at his current age, and you need O-line help as well. I mean, Joe Thomas is obviously that anchor for Cleveland, but he's getting older. He's bound to break down at some point. So you need offensive line help, clearly. You need cornerback help, and you have a lot of picks in this. You have 2 first-round picks. You have 2 first-round picks. You have 2 second-round picks. You have 1 third-round pick. You have 2 fourth-round picks, 3 fifth-round picks, and a 6th-round pick. So you have a lot of picks to bring players in to help the offensive line, the cornerbacking group. You have guys on the defensive line that are already good. That I think that the pieces on the front 7 can be in place when you bring in Myles Garrett. And then you look at the quarterback situation. I think you can do kind of what the Redskins did when they drafted RG3. You draft a guy 2 overall, but then back in the 4th round, you draft some guy named Kirk Cousins, who's currently your starting quarterback. So you can definitely take chances on quarterbacks as well because you have so many draft picks.
And that's the thing. When they don't have to me, they don't have to draft 2 quarterbacks if they draft one, only because they have RG3 already. They have Cody Kessler, who they drafted last year. What I think they should do, Myles Garrett number 1, then at the 9th, let's say right now it's the 9th overall pick because that's what it would be today. I'm looking at mock drafts on CBS, and of course, there are some disagreements of who I think will be where, but a guy that could be there is Cam Robinson, offensive tackle, Alabama. If he's there at 9, take him. Take a guy that you can say, okay, we're going to protect our quarterback. We're going to solidify that line while getting the defense going, and a quarterback that I think that not many people are going to say, like, oh, this is a guy that I want them to draft, but they could get him in like the late 2nd or even the 3rd, maybe a Dak Prescott situation where he could be drafted. I'm not saying potential, but Chad Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing...
Or as you like to call him, Cad Shelley.
Cad Shelley, I mean, obviously he has the injury problems, which is going to drop his stock significantly.
But even, he can be the 3rd-string quarterback behind Kessler.
No, I know.
Behind
I'm just saying, that drops his stock. You don't have to take him in the 3rd or 2nd round.
You can even take him in the 4th if he falls.
Yeah, I mean, if he's around in the 5th, you could take him. But the one thing with him is injury problems and temperament, because obviously he's shown that his temper isn't that great. But if you have a guy like Hugh Jackson, hopefully you can rein that in. But I think that the Browns, even though they might go 0-16, I think they are currently in a great position to, that's so weird to say, I think they're in a great position to flourish. Because if you draft a guy like Myles Garrett, you have a young linebacker in Jamie Collins who you got for a 3rd rounder. You have pieces on the outside like Corey Coleman. You have a deep running back class, and you don't need to draft a running back right now because you have Isaiah Crowell. But even in the next running back draft class, you have a guy like Geis from LSU. I mean, he can be a player that you can take if you really want to take this team up a notch. I think the Browns are in a great position to thrive. I think that the Browns, looking at the way that they have built this team and who their current coach is, it's weird to say that the Browns, I think, actually have a plan. And I think that drafting Myles Garrett number 1 is the smartest thing that you can do, without a doubt. Because I look at a player like Jonathan Allen, he's going to be a great player for somebody else. I look at a player like Reuben Foster, he's going to be a great inside linebacker for somebody else.
Reuben Foster could be available at 9. He could be there.
And if that is, then you have a guy who...
if you get Garrett and Foster with 1 and 9.
Yeah, and you don't need to play Foster right away. I mean, you have guys like Kirksey and Davis who are good, so when Davis's contract comes up or Kirksey's contract comes up, you don't need to resign him because you got Reuben Foster back there. And even something that could be interesting too at 9, I've seen a
trade back.
I've seen in Matt Miller's mock draft that he has a guy like Jabril Peppers ranked at 11. So you've seen if you can get a guy in that secondary who can be that dynamic, I think that it's very interesting what the Browns are doing. So you obviously need to take Myles Garrett number 1. I think that's the thing that we're going to drive home is that Myles Garrett is the number 1 pick right now unless something crazy happens.
Jabril's going to be the interesting one because to me, I have him top 5. But it's going to be one of those things.
Is he going with the Bears?
Do teams? I don't know yet. I haven't gone through my mock draft. He is going to be a top 5 pick though.
Please.
And the thing that I think with him is he's kind of that linebacker safety hybrid. The one thing that I've heard, and this was from who said it? Somebody said it on I think it was the Dan Patrick show. It was Neuheisel, the former UCLA head coach.
Rick Neuheisel.
He said on the Dan Patrick show that he thinks that he could be like a Cam Chancellor type of a player in a defense.
I was thinking
that kind of like linebacker, safety hybrid, but he's going to play more up in the box.
I was thinking more Ed Reed, I mean, the kid athletically is
plus he
ridiculous.
Can punt and kick return too.
Athletically is absurd. I mean,
play the wildcat. He could go wide receiver. It's running back.
Yeah, we get it. He's athletically insane. So I think if you can get a guy like, I mean, that's so interesting. I mean, it could be a top 5 pick the way the Eagles come out. So I think that the Browns are in a fantastic position. And again, it's so weird to say, but I think that the Browns in 4 years could be a playoff team after going 0-16.
And you mentioned running back. I want to ask you this about the Browns running back situation.
Yes.
Is there a situation in your head, and I'm looking at CBS's prospect rankings right now.
Yeah.
They have him 22 overall, projected as a first-round grade early on. In your mind, is there a chance that maybe Christian McCaffrey falls to the second round and then the Browns go, we don't need a running back, but let's take this kid because even if we don't use him as a running back, we can even use him as a wide receiver or a pass catcher out of the backfield.
I think really with any of these guys, it's really just how our team's grading them, and we don't really know how they're being graded currently. I mean, you can really, this is a deep draft class. I mean, a guy like Nick Chubb out of Georgia, who I really love, is 94 on CBS.
The guy right above him, Deontay Foreman.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many guys here that, I mean, James Conner too out of Pittsburgh. I mean, there is a lot of guys out there that can be very interesting to players. I mean, I brought up the 2013 draft class. Who went in the second round of the Steelers? Le'Veon Bell. I mean, I think that when one position suffers, like quarterback, you can find a lot of guys that are deep. And you're saying there's guys above guys like Nick Chubb. You're saying there's guys above guys like Deontay Foreman, guys above James Conner. I mean,
Samaje Perine.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I don't think they need a running back. They could draft one, but
I think
saying,
that, like, if it's like a late second, maybe a fourth rounder.
I mean, if McCaffrey falls to the third round, then take him.
With him, if he falls, it'd be a second rounder.
I don't think you waste a second round pick on him, and I'm not saying waste, but I don't think you use a second round pick on him. I think you go Myles Garrett. Then you either go. It depends on how they grade a quarterback, but I don't think a quarterback should be there. I think you need to go best player available with that 9 pick or the Eagles pick. I'll just say the Eagles pick. I think you go best player available there, and then when you look at you look at the second round, then you look O-line help both times because offensive linemen aren't players where you need to draft them first in the first round for them to hit because we've seen consistently that teams have hit in the second round on linemen. So I think that with the Browns, it should go defense, best player available, possibly best player available again, and then O-line help, and then third to the sixth round, then you go cornerback help, defensive help, and stuff like that. But I think the Browns, the way they drafted last year and the way that they brought in more picks, I think it can be a very successful draft for them this year.
The last thing I'm going to say, kind of to put a kibosh on my part, is I think that second first rounder, don't draft a quarterback. Right now, the way, of course, I've got to dive into the film, and I can't wait to start diving into prospect film and just getting into the draft season this year. But my early kind of thoughts are, like, Deshaun Kaiser, he's got a big arm. Yeah, he's athletic, but he's not the most accurate of quarterbacks. And his decision-making's kind of iffy. Trubisky, he's only had 12 career starts. That's a small sample size. He's not a guy that I think starts day one. He's a project. especially that first year. And then Deshaun Watson, it's like this should have been your year where you solidify yourself as the first overall pick, and you regressed. And with me, I think he'd be focused on the media and what others are saying about him. Even though he's a great kid, nice kid, he'd be focused on what people are saying about him rather than what's on the field.
One thing, too, with Trubisky that I want to throw out is that he has got ridiculous wide receivers, too. I mean, people don't bring that up enough. You have a guy like Bug Howard, who's like, I think he's like 6'6", who can just go up and get the ball. It's insane. And then you also have Switzer, too, who is just a monster out of the slot, who catches, I think, pretty much like half the balls that Trubisky throws. Obviously, that's a joke. He hasn't caught, 100 and something balls, but he's caught 91 balls. I mean, Switzer is a guy who is consistently looking. I mean, he has great weapons there, and that's one thing that with Trubisky is that kind of holds me back. But also with Trubisky, too, is you can't really knock his performances in big games because he's been able to show up in big games where you can't say that for a guy like that I have watched in Jake Browning, because Jake Browning kind of shied away in big games. But like you look at the main one that you want to look at, and that's the Florida State game, 31 of 38, 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interception. I mean, that's a ridiculous performance.
You ready for me to bring this full circle before we end the podcast?
Do it.
You know who is also a wide receiver for Trubisky? Austin Proehl. Played for who did we talk about at the beginning of the podcast? Ricky Proehl. Played for the Rams. Won the Super Bowl against who?
Titans.
Jeff Fisher. Bringing it full circle there.
End it.
Bringing it full circle. But that is going to do it for the onside kick today. I want to thank Sean for stepping in for Mark Weber, talking some great topics with me. This was a long one. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, thank you for staying with us in this one. Make sure to check out our Twitters are in the description. Make sure to check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. You like the podcast, you want to help support the channel, help us out there as well. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. I want to thank you guys for listening, and as always, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter @MostValuablePod for more great podcasts.